so I started to mention derivations when we were looking at Taylor Swift's chart. And just to review, if people didn't hear that one, the derivations are connected to the rulers of the different houses. And the first important one has to do with a person's ruling planet. So your ruling planet, because you have the Virgo rising, ruling planet is always the planet that rules the ascendant. It is not the planet that rules the sun sign. Even though the sun sign astrology books will say that that's your ruling planet, your true ruling planet is the ruling planet of your ascendant. So your ruling planet is your Mercury, which is sitting here in Scorpio in the 3rd and 4th houses. And we did look at that before, but what happens with derivations is that every house has a ruling planet. So you can learn about every part of your life by looking at the ruling planet of that particular house. So we have 11 other houses to look at, and it will tell you things about that part of your life.
That's really cool.
It's very cool, yeah. So your second house is the house of your earthly needs. So that's love and money. Then that's putting things into concrete form. Mm-hmm. And what is the sign that rules your second house?
That's the scales.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's right.
The scales are.
The scales are Libra.
Libra, yeah. I always get mixed up with Pisces. I don't know why.
You get it mixed up with what?
Water, right? Yeah.
You get it mixed up with what?
Pisces for some reason.
But
Pisces
interesting.
Water. Yeah, I don't know why.
Yeah, that is interesting. Okay, so Libra rules your second house. Mm-hmm. So what is the planet that rules Libra?
What is the planet that rules Libra?
Go back to the poem.
Mm-hmm. Venus,
exactly. So Venus in your chart tells a story about your earthly needs, about your approach to love and money, and how that your approach to it, and also the kinds of things that can happen. Sometimes a derivated planet will say a lot about the destiny of that part of your life. Other times it talks about how you approach or respond to or react to that part of life. And really those are two things are one and the same, but it's sometimes more obvious that it's one or the other when you look at a person in a person's life. So your Venus is here.
Yeah.
In Capricorn in the 5th house. So what would that say about that part of your life?
Capricorn in my 5th house?
Yep.
So Capricorn is like, again, the goal orientation.
Yep.
Structured. The 5th house is... Oh yeah, I'm in the 5th house. It's it's like my lovers, my children, my self-expression, my sense of power, my self-love.
Yep, that's right. And when you say you're in the 5th house, it's because you have Saturn transiting the 5th house right now. That's your primary transit.
Yeah. So I guess it would be saying, like, it's just really trying to structure those things, isn't it? Like, it's really...
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind for me is that in terms of financial stuff, it's the Capricorn part that is going to really have the most powerful effect. So for your financial self and your financial needs, you're going to be methodical and goal-oriented and move a step at a time and build things. But when we look at the romantic side of things, the need for love, well, Venus is sitting in the 5th house of lovers. So there's a link between the 2nd house and the 5th house in that way. Mm-hmm. So to me, it makes me think, well, you're more inclined in your 2nd house to probably think more about the love aspect of things than you are necessarily about the money aspect of things. Mm-hmm. However, you're going to be pretty methodical in terms of going about things. Mm-hmm. And you'll probably always in the back of your mind think about your romantic relationships and your financial situation. Just, somewhere in the back of your mind, well, if I had children, or I'm concerned about my children, these things are always going to play into it somehow. You know what I'm trying to say?
Mm-hmm.
Now, a couple of things that could happen with your second house ruler being in the fifth is that you could at some point be drawn to some kind of speculation to make money, because the fifth house is also the house of speculation or gambling and that sort of thing. Although the Capricorn part would be saying, and the Venus is not a risk-oriented planet, really. And Venus is not going out there and aggressively hunting risk. And Capricorn is reasonably conservative. So it wouldn't, if your ruling planet of your second house was maybe your Mars in the fifth house, then you might really be drawn towards speculative ways to make money. But Venus would say, oh, wait a minute, slow down here a bit.
So I'm being a little bit more careful with approach to,
yes. Now, the other thing that could happen with the ruling planet of the second house being in your fifth house is your kids could control your money a lot. So one little warning about becoming a parent: don't let them take too much of your money.
Yeah.
Mom, I want that. I want this.
I don't have any kids right now, but that's a good one. Yeah.
However, that's just one way we could look at that particular derivation.
And equally for the love, like, is it more like, again, just creating that structure and like that partnership? I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, you would always be looking at love in a let's figure this out and get somewhere in a step-by-step way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like it's like everything's a learning phase, and like making sure that it's, as you're learning, you're applying, the optimal way of like how like my soul wants me to be.
Yes.
Relationship. So
yeah, so we're going to move to the third house, and the third house once again is still ruled by the same sign,
Libra.
So your third house ruling planet is once again that Venus and Capricorn in the fifth house. But third house is a different area of life, or different areas of life. So what does the third house represent?
So the third house is your communication. It seems like other relationships, like friends, siblings.
Yes.
Yeah. Travel, early education. So, and it's in Libra.
Yes, Libra's the ruling. Libra's the sign that rules your third house. So what does that say about, just pick a department of life that interests you the most in terms of the third house?
Probably my communication. But with regards to Capricorn
and Venus too.
Venus too.
In the fifth house. So your communication is Venetian, Capricornian, and fifth house-like. Your communication is influenced by those things.
Yeah, I relate more to the Venus piece because that's like my ideal self.
Yes.
How I attract others to me. Like I resonate more with Venus.
Yes, I do too. With you, in this situation. I mean, even your voice, you have a very Venetian voice.
Oh, do I? Yeah, my concept of beauty, like it's all like it's been pretty prominent for me. So
yes. Yeah, and you communicate in a very calm and caring and considerate way. It's positive, and there's a quality of beauty and harmony to it.
It's very empathetic. Yeah.
Yep. But Capricorn sits back there too and says, what are the laws? What are the structure? You're always sort of feeling out what's the correct path to be steadily negotiating in terms of how I'm communicating.
Yeah, I like the integrity piece to Capricorn too, because
Yes.
that's something
Yes.
that resonates with me.
Yep, absolutely. Now, what's interesting, why are you drawn to the integrity piece? Whenever we have a question about something in the chart, why is it like this? The answer will always be found in the sun, because the sun is the center of the solar system. All the other planets are not just revolving around it, but from a physics standpoint and a metaphysics standpoint, they are all part of the sun. The solar energy includes the entire solar system. So everything goes back to the sun. Why is integrity the piece of Capricorn that you're drawn to in terms of how you express yourself? Because Sagittarius is the truth seeker.
Yes. No, that's for sure.
Isn't that, it's cool how that all comes back together. Even when we were looking at Taylor Swift's chart, there's all this struggle between self and partner. And that's a facet, again, of the sun, the Sagittarius piece, because in first and second stage, the Sagittarians have a tendency to attract difficult, critical partners. So that's still her working that all out, using it right now as creative fuel. So in your case...
How do you know that about the difficult partners? Like, is there, like, is that just what you've learned as you've gone?
Yeah, that's what I've seen as far as the bigger picture of how that sign evolves. And the difficult partners happen because Sagittarians are the ones that are seeking this pure truth of life. And in the first stage lifetimes, they are absorbed in that truth. They are absorbed in that divine source that we all come from, and they completely trust it. And because they trust it, everything works beautifully for them, and then everybody else gets offended by that. Why? And Sagittarius too goes, gee, I wish I could help other people. I don't know why I'm different. I don't know what I can do to help them be happier. And they're mad at you because you're happy and it's all working for you, but it's not working for them. So there's this experience of the world confronting you. And of course, in intimate relationships are the most important relationships to our being. And that's where you feel it the most. And so this is where you begin to attract difficult partners as a result of that. And it's something, as the stages develop, the person unwinds that so they no longer have the relationship problems.
It's interesting you mentioned the feeling different thing, though, because I feel like that still is kind of sometimes in the back of my mind.
Yeah, for sure. Of course it would be, yeah. Yeah, so let's move to another house.
Which house is?
So next house is the 4th house.
Yep. So that's your home,
Mm-hmm.
your childhood, your opposite sex parent. So that's going to have, like, what your relationship, does that mean your relationship that you have with that opposite sex parent is going to be influenced in that house?
Yes, yes. And sometimes you can look at that house and it will very clearly show some things about that parent. For instance, in my chart, I have Jupiter and Saturn in my 4th house. My father had Jupiter and Saturn rising. So it's like it's a perfect imprint. It's identical almost. It's amazing how that can happen sometimes.
Yeah, that's cool. And then my long-term career foundation and my sense of security. So it is ruled by Scorpio.
Yep.
And
what planet rules Scorpio? And we always use the old traditional planet.
Pluto.
Pluto is the new planet, but it's the old traditional planet is the one that's used in the derivations. The new planet is not.
So Mars.
Yep, Mars. So here we have Mars.
Mars is my aggressions, my sexual energy, how I pursue my goals, how I pursue my lovers, my actions, and my anger.
And it's in Virgo.
It's in Virgo.
Now, one thing about the planets being the actor and the signs being the costume, and then
Mm-hmm.
the house is the stage that they're acting out their role in.
Mm-hmm.
If we, sometimes it's useful to make a cartoon out of things.
Mm-hmm.
So if we look at Mars as being the warrior, this is the great warrior spirit, the sexy, ideal man who's out there and plundering the world and going and getting everything done and accomplished. So there's the noble warrior with his six pack, and his costume he's putting on is the Virgin, Virgo. Now, Mars in Virgo is not considered a negative placement for Mars. It's not considered a super positive placement for Mars. But to me, it's a bit of an odd placement for Mars, because how is the warrior going to operate automatically through Virgo? It's a little bit of a question mark at first.
So is that like, yeah, that is interesting. So what does that mean? Like the fact that there's kind of a little bit of a mask there in order to kind of
Yes.
like not show maybe
Mm-hmm.
the full level of strength, I guess. But
Yeah, I
yeah.
mean, some signs a planet just takes to immediately. They just do. They can express themselves. It's very much like acting, because there's actors that can portray all kinds of different images, and you forget, even no matter how famous they are, you forget that it's that actor, because they can express that role so effectively.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are other actors that they basically just play themselves.
Mm-hmm.
In every movie you see them, and it's the same personality.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some signs where you put the planet in that sign and it just expresses its same personality.
Mm-hmm.
And there are other signs where if you put the planet in that sign, the planet can develop a lot of skill in terms of expressing itself in a new way that it's not used to doing. And so it eventually becomes something completely different than what you might have thought it was.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes there's a gee, how do I do this? There's a bit of a feeling of a disconnect.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Now, one way Mars in Virgo can operate is Mars is going to try to forge forward and do stuff. So it's going to do it in a Virgo kind of way. So it's going to do it in a detail-oriented way. It's going to try to do it on a physical, practical level. It's going to possibly take things apart and put them back together because of the mutable quality of Virgo.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I just wanted to explore that.
Yeah.
So this being said, and then we're in the first house. So something about your fourth house comes back to your first house. Now, anything that comes back, any planet that rules a house that is then found in our first house gives us a certain amount of control over that house a lot of the time, because the ruler of that house is coming to you and landing in your lap.
Say that one more time. How does that work?
Well, if your first house ruler, or sorry, if a ruler of a house is in your first house is self.
Yeah.
This is giving you the key to that house that you can control.
Mm.
If Mars unlocks your fourth house, it's sitting in your lap. So you can pick up the Mars key and turn the lock in your fourth house.
Okay.
And the other Mars ruled houses too, for that matter, but we'll get to those. So this one is definitely a more intricate one to understand, but if you just sort of played with it and picked again some facet of what the fourth house represents, how might that come back to you in a Mars and Virgo kind of way?
In a Mars and Virgo way. So let me read Mars. I pursue my lovers. I think it's probably like tied to my goals, like a lot of the time.
Yep.
Like I'm building my long-term foundation, and I find like I do have definitely an aggressive side to me and an impatient side, I guess. There is like a level of softness I need to apply, and yeah, just making sure it's stable and not just bulldozing like forward maybe, and not having everything kind of structured appropriately so it is successful in the end, if that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah, that makes sense.
That's what I would say.
Yeah, now you're driven to be in control over your long-term career foundation because the ruler of your fourth house is sitting in your first house. So you're sitting, part of you says, well, instinctively, this is in my hands.
Mm-hmm.
Something I have to make happen. It's going to give you that drive to forge forward.
Yeah.
But how does Virgo influence all of that?
Virgo. So Virgo again is a little bit more, like, I think it's the organizational piece, like, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
well, I'm really analytical too. So I would say
Yes.
just really like making sure it's organized, but I'm assessing it based on kind of the right fit, if that makes sense.
That makes total sense. Yeah, and I mean, a Mars in Virgo is a drive to take care of all the details.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that makes sense.
That does make a lot of sense, yes. And in the long run, it feels like it does give you a lot of power, which is very nice.
That's cool.
Yeah, so I think we're probably done for today.
We actually did a lot today.
Yeah, we did. We really did. Pretty good for the flu.